What's up guys, TopTierYugioh here, and today we're going to have a duel video with Subterror Eidolons, and we're going to have 3 matches. One against Eidolon Artifact Wind Witches, one against Heroes, and then one against Infernoids. And so I'm actually curious, which of those decks do you think will pose the biggest problems for this deck next format, or any of the decks next format? Which one do you think will be the hardest matchup for Subterror Eidolons? So I'm going to put a poll in the top right corner of the screen with those 3 decks, as well as Zodiacs and maybe something else, just to see what you guys think. Pretty curious about that. And if you're interested in the deck profile for this, where I go into some of the card choices, I'm also going to put that in the top right corner of the screen, so definitely check that out. And I know the deck list is on the screen right now, but the deck profile is where I talked about all of the card choices, why I chose them, how this deck works, and a lot of the background and theory to the deck. But now that that's out the way, let's go ahead and get into these duels. And so in the first match, we're going to be going against sort of a mirror match against Eidolon Artifact Wind Witches. And so first things first, let's take a look at our opening hand, and we are going second this game. And so we have 1 Stalagmo, 1 Instant Fusion, 1 Pot of Desires, 1 Stygo Kraken, and then 1 Ghost Ogre. And so the first thing you're probably going to notice is that I was playing Stygo Kraken, and you're going to think like, hey, that wasn't the deck profile. But there's a reason for that. It was sort of a meta call to just take Stygo Kraken out. But let's go ahead and get into the duel. And so he's just going to set 1 card and pass turn. So then we draw into Hidden City and use that to search a Nemesis Warrior before activating Desires to draw into another Hidden City and then Reckless Magic Circle. So then we use Instant Fusion to summon Raideen, and then set Raideen to special summon our Stalagmo, but then he does destroy Stalagmo with Ghost Ogre. That's great for us because now we can normal summon Alistair, search our summoning magic, and then banish his Ghost Ogre to summon Merkaba. Then we can attack direct for 2500. However, he does use Compulse to return it to the extra deck so that I can't negate any of his plays. But then unfortunately he draws into another Ghost Ogre, which sucks. And so I'm able to flip Raideen, normal summon Nemesis Warrior, that way if he does try to use anything, I can just chain Nemesis Warrior's effect to dodge it. I sort of get the feeling that he did open pretty badly, so I'm not trying to push for game or anything, and then run into one of his possible traps. So then he top decks a Wind Witch, the good one. However, I am able to Ghost Ogre it. And then when he tries to use the equip card that lets you tribute the spellcaster and draw 2, I can't think of the name right now, I chain Raideen to flip it face down, and then he tries to Ghost Ogre it, but then I can chain Nemesis Warrior at Chain Link 4 to tribute the Raideen before it gets destroyed in order to special summon a Behemoth from my deck. And in retrospect, the correct play would have been to activate Hidden City first. That way I can summon that monster in face down defense, and then have some protection with the Hidden City. But nonetheless, he scoops after that turn because he doesn't really have any plays. So now let's go ahead and get into game 2, where he opens a lot better. And so after a terraforming, he has 2 Reckless Magic Circles, Sanctum, Compulse, and an Artifact Scythe. So he activates Circle to search at Alistair, and then Alistair to get Summoning Magic. Then activate Summoning Magic to discard the Scythe in his hand to get a Merkaba, and then adds back the Alistair. Then he sets both of his traps and passes. And so I special summon Terratop using the effect to get Takedown Borg, and then I activate my Reckless Magic Circle. Now the mistake that I made was that I maybe should have went into a Break Sword to destroy his Merkaba, just to kind of bait the effect, but then I didn't want him to negate the Break Sword and then not be able to get rid of the Merkaba. And so I was trying to save that for last, more or less. But that was probably incorrect, as he was able to just summon Scythe. So then on his next turn, he's able to summon a second Alistair, Wonder Wand it, and then use Summoning Magic to get a second Merkaba. And at that point, there's no way I can win this game, I don't think, as he's able to attack over all of my monsters, and then he still has 2 negations and a trap. And so I activate Terraforming and then try to use my own Reckless Magic Circle to summon a Magalancia. However, he does have to Compulse for it, and so the game's pretty much over. So then game 3, we have a pretty decent hand. We have 2 Alistairs, Pot of Desires, Vanity's Emptiness, and then Terratop. And so we go ahead and special summon Terratop to search Takedown Borg so we don't banish it with Desires. And then we go into Totem Bird, summon Alistair, then use the Summoning Magic to summon a Megalancia. That way we just have a big monster on board, and then we set the Emptiness. So we have a big monster, Spell Trap Negation, and an Emptiness. So that's a pretty good combination. However, he doesn't really have that much in his hand, as he has 2 artifacts, Summoning Magic with no Alistair, Wind Witch, and a Book of Eclipse. Then he draws into another artifact. And so then on my turn, he does activate Artifact Scythe, so I can't really use another Summoning Magic, at least not from the graveyard. Then I just go into a Utopia of the Lightning to attack over his monster, since he did normal summon an attack. He has the Book of Eclipse, but I just negate it with the Totem Bird, and then I'm able to just attack direct for game. So it's unfortunate that he drew so badly in 2 of those games, but that's sort of the risk you take when you play Artifact. I think there's a reason to why the Artifact Wind Witch version of Eidolon isn't really the most popular one in the OCG. I think it won 1 tournament, and everyone sort of hopped on the bandwagon, but it's generally not the most popular variant of it. It's just the fact that you can dead draw those artifacts just really makes it sort of inconsistent. Even though Artifact Scythe is just so overpowered, there's nothing you can do to stop Scythe outside of like a Chalice or Breakthrough Skill maybe. But once it resolves, it's done. And so in the second match, we're going against heroes, and we are going second, unfortunately. And that's never good against heroes, but we open up 2 Reckless Magic Circles, 2 Terraformings, and Instant Fusion. He has Hero Lives, Summoner Monk, 2 Strikes, and Floodgate Trap Hole. And so he's going to normal summon his Summoner Monk, activate the effect to discard Hero Lives to get a Shadow Mist, and then set all 4 of his back row. And so it's not looking good for me. And honestly, the correct decision would have been to just scoop so he doesn't know what deck I'm playing. However, for the sake of the replay, I decided to summon the Alistair and go for it. And so when I summoned Raideen, I tried to flip his monster face down to avoid it being tributed for a mass change, but that was actually really incorrect because that doesn't do anything. And so the correct play would have been not to use Raideen and save it to set my own monsters. However, he did have another strike, and so it really didn't matter. I sort of lost that game regardless. So game 3, we open up very, very good. We have Hidden City, Barrier, Reckless Magic Circle, Desires, and Stalagmo. So just a lot of strong cards in general. Like if you just think of this hand, we have Barrier and Desires. That's amazing, right? Then we have 2 strong field spells, and the best Subterror Behemoth. And so we activate Reckless Magic Circle to get Alistair, Hidden City to get Nemesis Warrior. Then we activate Summoning Magic to summon Megalancia, normal summon Nemesis Warrior and use the effect to summon another Stalagmo from the deck, Hidden City to flip that Stalagmo so that we can draw 2 more cards. Then we set it, and then set our Barrier. He summons a 10 Goldfish and then goes into Summoner Monk and then uses Summoner Monk to get a Shadow Mist, which will allow him to search a mass change. But I'm not really too worried about that right now. He goes into Utopia the Lightning to avoid Hidden City, and also any flip effects, which he probably knows my monsters have, which is why when he enters the battle phase, I activate my Barrier calling Xyz monster. Then he goes into an Anki instead, but I am able to negate that at least with Hidden City. And so he tries to attack Nemesis Warrior, but I just flip my Stalagmo and then summon another Nemesis Warrior, then use Stalagmo to draw 2 more cards. Then in main phase 2, he just sets 1 back row and passes. So then on my turn, I draw into an Instant Fusion. I flip my Umastrix and then use Nemesis Warrior as Chain Link 2, so if that 1 back row was a strike, he wouldn't have been able to strike my Umastrix. However, it was Vanity's Emptiness, so I can't summon my Nemesis Warrior anyways. However, it also means that neither player can special summon, obviously. So I banish his monster, then I flip my Stalagmo to use that effect to draw 2 more cards, so I draw into a second Barrier, then I activate another Reckless Magic Circle to search an Alistair, then another Hidden City to search an Archer, before passing turn. So then he summons a Bubble Man and goes into the battle phase, and so I go ahead and call Xyz on Barrier again, so he can't avoid that Hidden City flip. And then on that time I banish the Bubble Man, because that can cause a lot of problems later on. Then on my turn, I finally use Umastrix to banish his Utopia the Lightning. Then I use Stalagmo to draw 2 more cards. I draw into a Nemesis Warrior, which I go ahead and normal summon, and then just attack for a game with all of my monsters. And so I thought this game was a great example of just generally using Stalagmo a lot, just to pretty much cycle through my deck. Like if you look right now, I think I have 2 cards left in deck or something. Like I really cycle through the deck, and of course I used Desires once, but that's only once. So this deck is extremely fast. You can really get through your deck quickly, and you get to see all of your cards pretty much. So again, this is why I maximized on Stalagmo's effect. And the last game was actually game 2. I'm sorry I misspoke on that, but for game 3, we're going to be going second once again, but we did open Max Seat and Ghost Toker along with Alistair, Desires, and Terraforming. And so he ends up going into a Rafflesia with 1 set back row. So we normal summon Alistair, and then he goes ahead and flips it face down with Floodgate Trap Hole using Rafflesia, which I thought was a very interesting play. But nonetheless, I go ahead and summon a Megalancia, then add the Alistair back to my hand before attacking over Rafflesia. Then I activate the Terraforming to get Hidden City, then Upstart to draw another Hidden City, and Desires, and the goal was just to draw more defense than just the Megalancia, but unfortunately I didn't. But his face down was a Twin Twisters, and so I felt that Twin Twisters was actually sort of a bad play because heroes sort of need a complicated game state, and then using a 2 for 2 like that in that situation really led to him only having that 1 card left, while I had like 7 or 8 cards. And so not a really smart move, especially on a dead field spell. And then he discarded a mass change as well, leaving himself with only a second Twin Twisters. So it's like if he drew into a hero monster, that mass change would have been really useful. Whereas Twin Twisters is never going to be that useful because right now I don't have any back row. And I just normal summon Nemesis Warrior and attack with both of the monsters. And I probably could have made a more aggressive play, but I just didn't want to run into a trap when I didn't have to. I'm in the better position here, and so I don't need to do a lot to win this game. And so next we're going to be going against Infernoids. So let's take a look at our hand. We have Desires, which I've been opening a lot for some reason. I don't know, but nonetheless, we have Desires, 2 Terraformings, Terratop, and Archer. And so we're going to activate Terraforming for Hidden City for Nemesis Warrior, Terratop for Takedown Board, and then normal summon the Nemesis Warrior, and then tribute all 3 for a Stalagmo. Then use Hidden City to flip the Stalagmo, bring back the Nemesis Warrior, Warrior and then draw 2 cards. And so this is like the standard Terror Top Hidden City play that we talked about in the combo video, which I will link in the top right corner of the screen. Then we use Summoning Magic to use an Alistair from our hand and a Terror Pop in the graveyard to go into Raideen. So we have Hidden City, Nemesis Warrior, a set Subterror, and then Raideen. So this is a pretty strong board that I felt pretty good about. But then he Twin Twisters the Hidden City to use his Book of Eclipse to set all of our monsters face down. Then he summons Primus, which shuffled one of them back to the deck. I could not believe that actually happened. Then he normal summons Decatron and use the effect to send Systemus to the graveyard and then copy the effect. He attacks in the Nemesis Warrior and then uses it to banish the Raideen. So what I thought was a strong board, he cleared it effortlessly, and we drew into another Stalagmo. So I activate the Reckless Magic Circle to get Alistair to get a Summoning Magic, and then I use Nemesis Warrior's effect to try to get a Stylo Kraken and maybe bait his effect, which he does, and then I'm able to summon a Raideen. And then I can attack direct for a good amount of life points. Then I activate another Hidden City, and again, at this point I'm feeling really confident with this board. I have Hidden City to protect from attacks. I have Nemesis Warrior, which I can tribute any of my monsters to special summon the Behemoth face down to again protect from attacks. And then I also have the Raideen, and he only has 1 card in hand. And so he summons the Systemus that he drew, but then uses Burial to add 3 back to the graveyard and summon a second Systemus. I flip one of them face down as he attacks one of my monsters, then banishes the Raideen again. So then I normal summon Archer, and then attack and then crash into a Systemus to get a Stalagmo. And I wanted to get a Umastrix, but I actually banished all of them with the Desires that I activated earlier. And so I had to go into the Stalagmo here, which was really unfortunate. So then I tried to use the effect of maybe turbo into something else, but I didn't. So I'm forced to just turn all of my monsters to defense, and then he's able to just destroy one with Harmadic, and then just like, attack with a Systemus. So I draw into the Upstart. I have Terror Top with no Take Tumborg. Like, no Alistairs left in deck. Like, I'm pretty much out of resources. And at this point, he's able to just beat me down. And so we'll be going first in game 2. We have Summoning Magic, Alistair, Archer, Stalagmo, and then Terraforming. And so we're going to activate the Terraforming to search a Hidden City. Then use Hidden City to search a Nemesis Warrior. Use Summoning Magic to summon a Megalancia. Normal summon the Nemesis Warrior, and then go into our standard Stalagmo play. And so we're going to use Hidden City to flip Stalagmo and bring back Nemesis Warrior to draw 2 more cards. And then we draw into a DD Crow and another Alistair. So once again, what I think is a pretty good board, like the Hidden City, we have Nemesis Warrior to sort of dodge any targeting, Hidden City will negate from attacks, and then we have Stalagmo, which is just a big beefy dude, you know, plus the DD Crow. But he activates Reasoning, and he mills a lot of cards, like a lot. Way more than one DD Crow can handle. And then he summons a Raiden on top of that, uses Primus to send my set monster back to the deck, and I just use Nemesis Warrior's effect at that time. Then he uses Instant Fusion to go in Thousand Eyes Restrict, takes my set Umastrix, and then goes into a Coral Dragon and summons another Systemus. And again, the one DD Crow was like completely dead. He had way too many monsters at this point. So I'm able to summon an Alistair, and then when I go for the effect, he has the Barrier on top of that. And so that was a really quick Savage 2-0 by Infernoids. And this wasn't even with the Lawn Mowing card. So this deck's actually going to be really scary next format. And just looking sort of at what they do and considering all their monsters are DD Crows, and Eidolons you can banish the Summoning Magic, and that's going to just stop their engine right there after that first fusion summon. Against Zodiacs you can banish the Rat, and then like you're done. You can't do anything with 2 rats. Or with only 2 rats. Then they have monsters that can negate spells, traps, and monsters between Anunku and Deviati. If they play a fusion build, they can make you waste some of your cards in your extra deck with Tierra. And as you saw, they can summon Crimson Blader, which, I mean, I never thought about Crimson Blader, but you saw what it did against Eidolons. Like, you can't fuse for anything if you're under Crimson Blader. And so, I think Infernoid are a very underrated deck for this upcoming format. They're going to be really good. And whether you're playing Pure Infernoid, Burning Abyss Infernoid, Zodiac Infernoid, or whatever, it's a good deck. And so I definitely recommend it to anybody who's looking for something to play next format, but they don't really want to play some of the mainstream decks. But alright guys, thanks for watching, and if you're looking for the deck profile, it will be in the top right corner of the screen as well as in the description. And so definitely check that out, even though it's already on the screen. But the deck profile goes into a lot of the card choices and why we picked them. So definitely do that, I'd really appreciate it. But I would also appreciate it if you like this video and subscribe to the channel. And so thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you all later.